Is there a moment, guys, where is it a regulatory event where you'll say the Visa Mastercard duopoly can get challenged? Is there a set of boundary conditions that you have written down where when you can check a few of these boxes, you know that it's time for those companies to get dismantled?
The behavior we're seeing right now is that stablecoins are most interesting and seeing most adoption where there is some cross-border component. And so you need to manage corporate treasury around the world. You want to send remittances to people in other countries. Often it's people in other countries want to hold dollar balances or things like that. What we've always seen is that, I don't know, in the US, things work pretty well. In Europe, things work pretty well. And so we even see this pre-crypto where the way people pay for stuff has been radically changing. UPI in India, PIX in Brazil. You have all these designed by central banks, actually really good kind of government-run Venmo solutions. Those have all happened in emerging markets broadly and not in the US and Europe. We certainly keep our eyes peeled for that changing at some point. But I think right now, I don't know, Patrick, would you characterize it that way, that like a lot of the interesting stuff we see is happening internationally?
Yes. So, with respect to Visa and MasterCard, I think an important thing to keep in mind is that most of the interchange fees that are charged to merchants, and you mentioned what we charge the All In podcast, the vast majority of that flows right back to the issuing banks in the form of interchange. And almost all of that flows right back to the consumers in the form of the lending that the cards themselves represent, but then also in card rewards. Like card programs are not actually big profit pools for most of the major banks. And so I think any substitute for Visa and MasterCard in that sense, the sort of a question of, well, are the consumer rewards going to go down? Are the consumer protections going to go down? Would we be extending less consumer credit? And maybe other points in that space are viable, but it is a set of trade-offs and it's not as simple as there's this enormous rent extraction happening. John's totally right. I think the interesting use of stablecoins is cross-border, is outside the US. I mean, the big use case that's taking off right now is consumers in other countries seeking to hold dollars. We in the US here today, we obviously benefit from being able to do that. The vast majority of people in the world have are subject to a worse currency, worse in the sense that it's less stable, it's more inflationary. Storing savings is much less favorable. If you look at the Naira, for example, there are a lot of people in Nigeria, and the currency there has devalued by a factor of 3 or 4 over the last couple of years. And so that use case of consumers being able to store dollars is really exploding. And we think about this really as kind of an analogy to the euro dollar system, where the euro dollar system in the 70s and 80s, this was a way for companies to store dollars and to have something more stable and reliable and so forth. But it was only I think the minimum transaction size was like $1 million, and so there's kind of a very high barrier to entry. Whereas with stablecoins, now you can be a consumer in Ecuador and you can have like a $10 balance, and that was just not a product that was accessible to you before. And so I think it's a really big deal, certainly for people in those countries, and in some sense also for the US, because the dollar status as the world's reserve currency, I think, is in the process of becoming much more deeply established.
Yeah, that is the huge win for allowing stablecoins and, making them legal, giving them rails, putting aside Tether and all the bans and fugazi stuff they've been doing or have done, and all the lawsuits that they've lost and the bans in different countries. Having USDC, having yours and other ones in the United States means we can regulate them, and they have to buy treasuries.
In a recent episode of the All In podcast, Chamath Palihapitiya announced a groundbreaking trend that's set to take center stage this year. With dollar-denominated stablecoins allegedly poised to overshadow giants like Visa and Mastercard, there's a buzz building within the world of finance that could shake the foundations of major players. But don't grab your popcorn just yet. We're only scratching the surface of what could be the financial story of the year. Welcome back to Investocracy Crypto.
All In, just using the example, could accept payment in stablecoin, correct? With Stripe, we just check a button and we get stablecoins.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so then the next piece I have
and
is
we'll follow up with you afterwards to make sure we
exactly get that going.
You can
well, I'm actually really excited that you guys are going to be sponsoring the All In Summit this year. That's actually exciting. So
it's super exciting. No, Freeberg is great at securing the bag.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting, though, is if, let's say, we had a milli sitting in our Stripe account, and then we had to pay a venue or pay other vendors, and we're sitting there in your coin's called Bridge. Is that what's going to be called, or is called?
Bridge is the company, is the platform, and that's like there were set of
so they're
APIs
not a stable
for
coin.
orchestrating.
Yeah.
Correct.
But you'll have a Stripe stablecoin at some point, yeah? Like one name.
Bridge
Stripe,
actually has one already.
Yeah, Bridge has a small stable coin, but we don't need to get into the details. But Bridge is primarily a set of software APIs.
Got it. But you'll obviously have a Stripe stablecoin.
The point is, if you turn on stablecoin acceptance with, for all in, today that'll use USDC.
Perfect. Now, could we then go pay people from our Stripe account, and then you could lower our fees if they were also doing stablecoins? Does that exist today, or is that something coming next year?
Look, you could pay people in stablecoins, but again, to the point of where you'll see adoption first, paying people via bank transfer in the US, it's not great, it's kind of slow, everything like that, but it's fine. It's not the biggest problem.
Whereas and it's really cheap today.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas the people who are using Bridge, it's like Scale AI is, they have to pay the contractors all around the world. And when you want to get money to people in the Philippines, that starts to get really annoying and expensive. And so just from our point of view, the real hair on fire problem is the international stuff, and domestic. I assume you're paying domestic suppliers. It'll come later.
I think you're answering narrowly to stablecoins. I think everything you just said is right. But I will say, I think, Jason, your intuition that, man, it's really inefficient and annoying to engage in B2B transactions and to get these invoices paid and just like the whole system. And if you look at most companies, they're losing 1%, 2%, 3% of revenue to AP and AR. Now, some of that might be because of the transaction rails themselves. A lot of it just because of baroque, inefficient processes where you have humans sending invoices, humans reconciling them. You're trying to line up transfers in your bank account statement and figure out what corresponds to what and so on. And that's super inefficient. And so we're separately, stablecoins will be part of the solution here, but there's more to it. Separately, we're trying to solve that with a product called Stripe Billing, which we actually just announced last week has passed $500 million in ARR. And so we
can send an invoice to somebody with Stripe Billing. Exactly. So that's like FreshBooks or whatever those other products in the market are.
According to Palihapitiya, these stablecoins detach themselves from the traditionally volatile crypto sector at the cusp of 2024, finding their niche in wholesale, useful functions. His data points are compelling, revealing that by the end of Q2 2024, stablecoin transactions hit 1.1 billion, amounting to an eye-watering $8.5 trillion in volume. And if that's not staggering enough, stablecoins have already doubled the transaction volume of Visa over the same period.
Chamath, do you have a prediction for your biggest business winner of 2025, sir?
I think the biggest business winner of 2025 are going to be dollar-denominated stablecoins.
Ooh.
I'll make 2 points. In 2024, 2 critical things happened. The first is that stablecoins essentially became uncoupled from crypto volatility, and it started to be used for wholesale useful functions in running businesses. And there's an image here that starts to show that. So independent of crypto volatility, what you saw were stablecoin usage just rising up and to the right. That's an incredibly important decoupling that happened in 2024. The second, and this data is still just trickling in, but it's an incredible stat. Stablecoin usage at the end of the second quarter of 2024 was about 1.1 billion transactions that summed to $8.5 trillion of transaction volume. If you compare that to Visa over the same period, it was more than double Visa's transaction volume. So I think what we have now is something that has fundamentally crossed a point of no return. Similar to how last year I thought that the big trend was going to be Bitcoin in 2024. I would say that the big trend in 25 is stablecoin usage. I think we're going to finally attack the duopoly of Visa and Mastercard. I think you're going to see an innumerable number of use cases that sit and use stablecoin rails. I think when Donald Trump becomes president, I think you're going to see him go after incredibly high credit card transactions and costs. You're already seeing cracks in consumer credit anyways because of these high APRs. All of this stuff is going to come to a head in 2025, I think. And I think stablecoins could quadruple or quintuple by the end of 25. I think it's just going to be an enormous market.
Great choice. Should they be regulated?
By topping Visa, stablecoins have not just entered the mainstream, they've bulldozed their way in, leading Palihapitiya to subtly hint at a changing of the guard, with stablecoins possibly slicing into the market dominance long held by Visa and Mastercard. Palihapitiya has also stated that this is far from the end, as he painted a picture of expansive growth, hypothesizing that the stablecoin sector could potentially quadruple or quintuple by the year's end. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Chamath, we saw at some of these congressional hearings, Tether was kind of dragged for being the primary transfer and monetary tool for terrorism, for getting around sanctions, and for human trafficking. Should it be regulated? And how?
I don't think I'm qualified to say how it should, but I think the point is that there are these immutable logs that sit in between and on either side of all of these transactions. And so I think the knowledge is there, and there are a whole bunch of third-party services that add that intelligence layer. I think the thing to really question is, if you just took 300 basis points of drag out of the global economy,
massive gains.
How valuable would that be? And I think it would be valuable just in the United States alone to the tune of $1 trillion. So the idea that you wouldn't do it at this point is somewhat quizzical to me. So I just think that the economic justification for this now is just so profound.
The stablecoin's current trajectory suggests not just a temporary surge, but a lasting transformation that could redefine financial transactions as we know them. With predictions of their market possibly quadrupling or quintupling, the potential growth appears vast and teeming with opportunities. But what do you think? Share your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.